And now, it's time for...
Ghost Month
Yeah, that too.
on the Horror Guys.
Another episode of the Horror Guys.
That's right. We're continuing our Ghost Month here.
That's right.
With episode 287.
Ghosts and nothing but ghosts.
Yeah, it is entirely ghosts this week. What do we have?
This thing says week 267. It's actually 268, and you just said 286.
Numbers are hard. Did I say 286?
It's some random episode. We don't know.
But it is Ghost Week.
Yes.
Ghost Month.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is the Horror Guys podcast.
And we're not as confused as we initially sound.
We could be. Yes, it's Ghost Month, and this month we have nothing but the ghost stories. What do we got this week?
We got a classic, The Fog, from 1980.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And another good one, Ghost Story, a year later from 1981. And a newer one called Personal Shopper from 2016. And then we're going to continue with our Paranormal Activity series and talk about number 2. And on our bonus things, we've got number 3, where we're not going to really discuss it. But if you want to check out the website, you can see the full review.
Yeah, the Paranormal Activity 3 and also Stir of Echoes from 1998. Kevin Bacon fights the ghosts.
That was a cool one with the hypnosis and the ghost and the...
Yeah.
And the kind of a who done it, who did it mystery kind of thing going on. Yeah, I liked that one a lot.
I saw that when it came out, and I remembered it being kind of dull. And no, it really wasn't. It was pretty good.
Yeah, the visuals are cool, and yeah, liked it a lot. And then we got a short, too. That's also a ghost story of sorts.
We do.
Seems ghostly.
It's Ghost Month, and we're sticking to it.
Yeah.
Well, what do we got first?
We got The Fog from 1980, which was written and directed by John Carpenter, also written by Deborah Hill. Stars Adrienne Barbeau, Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh, John Houseman, and Tom Atkins. What a powerhouse cast of horror people.
Yeah.
Yeah. The runtime is 1 hour and 29 minutes, and there's a trailer in the show notes.
Spoiler-free, what happens?
Well, spoiler-free, this still holds up pretty well. It's suspenseful. The tension builds nicely. Cast does a good job with it. And the practical effects do the job and hold up for the most part. We were entertained.
Yeah, normally when you hear the name John Carpenter, you think of Halloween or maybe The Thing.
Uh-huh.
This is a little more traditional horror story.
A little bit.
And
yeah.
it's still super good.
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah.
Maybe not certainly not his most famous movie.
And not my favorite of his works, but it's mighty good.
Yeah, it holds up real well.
You should spoil the heck out of it for everybody who hasn't seen it.
We open on Mr. Matchin, an old sailor who's going to tell one more ghost story to the children before midnight.
And why are these kids up so late?
Why are they hanging out on the seashore with this old sailor guy?
Yeah. But anyway.
100 years ago, on this very day, a small clipper ship was surrounded by fog. They saw a fire and steered toward it. It was a campfire, and the ship crashed. Everyone aboard drowned as the fog lifted. The fog never came again, but the old fisherman says that when the fog returns to Antonio Bay, the men in the water out there will rise up and search for the campfire that led them to their dark and icy death.
So it was murder.
And he tells a story in front of a big campfire.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And the credits roll.
Yeah.
No murders, and not at this point. It just sounds like an accident.
Whoa, okay.
They saw a campfire.
They saw a fire on the shore.
There could be more to it.
Could be.
Well, then we cut to a man listening to radio DJ Stevie Wayne on the radio, and he does work for Father Malone, who can't afford to pay him. The old priest is broke. And the guy, after they argue a little bit, the worker leaves. And the old priest finds a book that was hidden in the wall. Just coincidentally, this brick falls out of the wall 100 years after this thing. And he finds the book. Midnight till 1 belongs to the dead, the book says. Around midnight, weird things start happening all over town with machines and electricity. The grocery store has an earthquake, and the gas station runs by itself. Stevie, on the radio, reports clear skies all over town, and especially over the old lighthouse, where she's broadcasting from. She gets a call from Dan, who reports a fog bank way out at sea.
Perfectly natural. Nothing to be worried about.
Nah,
Yeah.
Out on the road, Nick Castle picks up a hitchhiker. She's Elizabeth. Something breaks all the windows in the car as they drive. And this is Jamie Lee Curtis from Halloween 1 and 2.
And Tom Atkins from
From
Halloween 3.
It's the crossover we didn't know we need.
Right.
Yeah, these guys, the guys on the ship out there, the fishing boat Seagrass, look out toward the approaching fog bank. It has lights inside.
Well, that's not normal.
The fog hits and their generator shorts out. They see a giant sailing ship pass them by, and the men are soon killed by what looks like pirates.
Yeah, they do look piratey.
Dan calls Stevie back. That fog bank has changed direction against the wind. That's not supposed to happen.
Mm-mm.
At Nick's place, hitchhiking has escalated into sex as the two get real close real fast.
It escalates quickly.
You pick up a hitchhiker and take him
Next
home.
thing you know, yeah.
Someone comes knocking at the door. It's a man with a hook. But when Nick goes outside, there's no one there. He got lucky.
Mm-hmm. That's all in the timing.
The radio announces that it's now 1 a.m. Oh, 1 a.m. hit and the guy disappeared.
They're only allowed to be out for an hour.
The next morning...
Because rules.
Because rules, yes. The next morning, a kid on a beach finds a piece of wood with Dane written on it. He's Andy Wayne, Stevie's young son. He was one of those kids listening to Mr. Matchen's ghost story last night. Nick and Elizabeth go to the dock. He's angry because the Seagrass didn't come home last night. What is his purpose?
I don't,
Does he own the boat?
If they said I missed it,
Okay.
I don't know.
Why does he care?
There's some connection there.
Nick asks Ashcroft to take him out to search for the missing boat. Elsewhere, Mrs. Williams and Sandy talk about a big presentation comes up. Mr. Williams, her husband, was the captain of the missing boat. Nick finds that missing boat just floating out there with no one on board. Everything on board smells like salt water. Eventually, they find a body. Just one. The man drowned, but he's still on the ship, and he was stuck in a cupboard somewhere.
Huh.
How does that happen?
How did that happen?
Well, Mrs. Williams and Sandy go to the church to talk to Father Malone. He shows them the old book he found, and he reads about the ship Elizabeth Dane, which was carrying a boatload of lepers to a new leper colony. Malone's grandfather and the town's preacher at the time conspired to kill the lepers and steal their money. As they killed the man, an unearthly fog rolled in to help them. Yes, the town's founders were all murderers.
See, it was murder.
Antonio Base has a curse on it, he says. We're all cursed.
They lit the fire, and the people on the boat thought it was a beacon. Crashed right into the rocks.
But they did it on purpose.
They did it on purpose.
Well, Stevie watches as that piece of wood with Dane on it changes to say, 6 must die. Because rules. At home, Andy wonders about the strange clouds out on the horizon.
That's how many were in the conspiracy.
Okay.
There were 6 that did it.
Nick and Elizabeth head back to town after finding the body on the boat, and the coroner has a pretty strange report about that. But then the body gets up and lunges at Elizabeth before collapsing. And the coroner doesn't really ask any questions about how that happened.
Yeah.
Downtown that night, the 100th anniversary celebration of the town's founding goes on. At night. Because who does
Why not?
that?
Yeah.
Nick tells Mrs. Williams about what happened to her husband out at sea last night, and he calls Stevie on the phone to ask about that fog rolling in. She tells him how the fog was glowing last night, and also about the strange driftwood that Andy found. Nick and Elizabeth decide to go out to the lighthouse. Dan calls Stevie and reports another fog bank moving in. Dan says the fog has reached where he is, and there's someone knocking at the door.
Don't answer. But he does.
Dan doesn't live long after that, but Stevie can hear his screams over the phone. Outside, the fog breaks down the phone lines and the power station. It's very smart fog. They didn't have these things 100 years ago. How did the fog know about it?
Good question.
Dan calls Stevie and reports another fog bank moving in, and then he dies because I already read that part.
Yeah.
We are really on a roll today.
The fog hits the town.
Yes, it does, including where Andy's house is. He's there with the old elderly babysitter, and they have no idea where the fog has come from. The people in the fog take the babysitter, and start hacking through the door to get Andy. Nick shows up to grab Andy just in time. As everything happens, Stevie reports where the fog is around town, and she tells everyone to get to the old church.
And all these people are up at midnight.
Oh, because of the party.
Yeah, which is at midnight.
Nick, Elizabeth, Andy, Mrs. Williams, and Sandy, along with Father Malone, barricade themselves in the old church. They figure out that 6 must die. Well, there were 3 on the ship. There's the babysitter, Dan the weatherman. Who's gonna be number 6? The dead break the windows and try to come inside. The fog then hits the lighthouse where Stevie is, all alone. She barricades the doors, but that's not gonna stop the dead. She winds up climbing to the roof of the lighthouse. The people in the church find a huge, solid gold cross made from the treasure of the murdered lepers. Father Malone grabs it and runs outside. "Blake, I have your gold," he yells. The leader of the dead approaches him, but rather than run, Malone offers himself as the 6th victim. Didn't see that coming.
I kind of did.
Yeah. The dead close in on Stevie, but back at the church, the dead zap Father Malone, which apparently just ends the curse because they got their gold back. The dead all vanish, leaving the priest alive. They decide not to take him, and the fog recedes quickly. All done.
Yeah, happy ending.
Yeah, it's like when you shoot Jason and he's just laying there dead and you walk away.
Uh-huh.
It's all fine now.
Yeah, sure.
Father Malone wonders why the dead didn't take him. But then he turns around, and the leader of the dead is standing there to kill him after all.
Gotcha.
Gotcha, fake out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, there's Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins, so clearly John Carpenter has a thing for these two.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Halloween crossover we didn't know we needed.
But that's a thing. I mean, directors will work with people, and they like them and what they can do and bring them back for other stuff.
Like many John Carpenter films, the soundtrack here really adds to the creepiness of the situation. Actually, this may have been before Halloween 3. I'd have to check my dates.
Oh, I didn't think of that. It was after the Halloween movie.
Definitely, yes. Yeah. It all gets very tense for a while, but it turns out the dead only wanted 6 victims, so they're kind of self-limiting. There was an unnecessary remake of this in 25, which I think we may have seen, but we didn't officially see it on the show yet. We'll have to watch that sometime.
Yeah, Halloween 3 was released in 82.
Okay, so this was before it. It wasn't really a crossover yet. This is more of a preview.
Right.
But this one holds up just fine. It's very good. We liked it. It's definitely worth your time watching it.
It was also released before Halloween 2. It was 81. So
yeah.
They could have been, some filming things going on at the same time. But as far as release days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Ghost Story, 1981, directed by John Irvin, written by Peter Straub and Lawrence D. Cohen, stars Craig Wasson, Alice Krieg, and Fred Astaire, and a couple other old guys you might recognize.
Recognizable faces in it, yeah.
1 hour, 50 minutes, trailer in the show notes.
So it's a bunch of old guys versus the Borg Queen.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's a long, slow story of very slow revenge. Takes like 50 years for this movie to get going.
Yeah, decades later, she's coming back for revenge.
It wasn't dull, but it did seem a little stretched out getting to the good stuff. There's a lot of flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's gradually explained and unfolds, much of it in flashback. If you're in the mood for a low-key and chilling tale, this one's for you.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the name is pretty appropriate. It's a ghost story. It's not necessarily a horror. Well, it is a horror movie, but
yeah,
the horror elements are few and far between. It's more of a creepy suspense story.
Creepy, chilling kind of story.
Why is this weird stuff happening?
Yeah.
What happens?
Well, we open on a snowy village where 4 old men are all having nightmares separately. Credits roll. James Sears.
Sears James. His first name is Sears.
Sears James.
It's a weird name.
Yeah. He tells a story to the assembled group of the old tuxedo-clad men. They really dress up to the nines for this meeting.
They dress up in their tuxedos and sit around and drink their drinks and tell ghost stories.
Yep, the 4 of them, yeah. Ricky Hawthorne, John Jaffrey, and Edward Wanderley sit there and listen to the story. These old men get together to tell each other ghost stories regularly. They are the Chowder Society.
And Sears is, the old man from the previous movie.
Yeah, who told the story.
What's his name? Oh, boy.
I
John Houseman.
Yes.
Yes, he was the old captain in the beginning of the movie telling the scary story, and here he's doing it again.
He's a good storyteller.
It's the same year.
Yeah. Well, no, this was a year later.
Okay.
Came out a year later.
He got practice in the other movie.
Yep. Elsewhere, a younger guy, David, talks to a mysterious woman in his bed. "Who are you?" She replies, "You know."
Yeah, that's probably not the time to be asking.
Yeah, like you've just had sex with this woman.
Who are
Well,
you anyway?
And she rolls over to reveal that she's a rotted corpse, and he backs away and falls out the window to his death. Well, David's twin brother, Donnie, gets a call to come home for the funeral. Don is a writer and also Edward's father. No, that's not
Edward
right.
is his father.
Edward is their father, yeah. One of the old guys from the story club. Don has a feeling that his brother was murdered, but his father doesn't want to hear about that. And Don tells him that he slept with David's fiancée.
And Edward's like, that's TMI, go away.
Yeah, but it's more complicated than that, too.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and we find out in flashbacks how that goes later. But, well, that night, the four old men all have nightmares again. And in the morning, Edward wanders outside in the snowstorm. He hears a woman's voice, and it's that same dead woman that David had in bed with him. He backs away and falls off the ridge to his death. Well, Ricky, John, and Sears talk about their friend's death. John's pretty dazed, but Ricky and Sears share a look.
Could it be?
They have a
No.
feeling. Yeah. Well, meanwhile, Don goes through some old photos of Edward's, his dad's place, and he finds one of the four men and a woman, and her face is kind of blurred out. But she looks really, really familiar. There's enough there to say, yeah. Well, Ricky goes inside an old abandoned house, and does he hear a woman laughing? He looks around and does find a couple of squatters. They claim that the owner who lived there gave them permission to live there. They're a little crazy, and the old man gets scared and leaves. That one's Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
He identifies Gregory Bates from the police photos. That's the squatter guy. Gregory was a member of some kind of cult, and he's known to be unstable. Well, sometime later, Don shows Ricky the old woman's photograph. The guy with the four women, the four guys with
The blurry
woman.
woman in the photo.
Yeah, ask her who she is. And later, Don finds Gregory in his house. Crazy. Well, Don shows up at their meeting and tells the three old men that he wants into the Chowder Society. The cost of admission is a story. And he says, "I think this is a ghost story." And he begins his flashback. Don was teaching at the university when he met a mysterious woman named Elma. And the two went out on a date and hit it off. One thing leads to another, and they have kind of weird sex, but they seem to be getting along okay for a while. They hang out a lot together, but she says nothing about herself, other than she's terrified of water. She only wants to know about him. Well, she tells Don that she wants to visit his hometown and meet Don's father and brother before the wedding. It's important to her to be married in front of Don's father and all his friends, the whole town. Well, Elma's odd, keeps getting odder, and Don wants to delay the wedding. She reacts badly, and Don starts having nightmares about her. And the next day, Elma's just gone. She left town. Some time passes, and the dean, fires Don because his work is failing, and he's suffering over Elma. David and Don... This was back when he was still alive. David says he's getting married to a girl named Alma. What a coincidence.
She left Donnie, went to David.
Yeah, it's that Elma. Well, Don warns his brother that she's dangerous, but the next thing he heard was that his brother was dead. Looks like Don dodged a bullet. Back in the present, Don tells the three old men all that actually happened. And he shows them the old photo of them and the blurry woman, and he says, "That's Elma." The old guys don't doubt the story is true. They knew she'd be coming back. Well, John attacks his wife Millie that night, acting out a nightmare. The next morning, the two talk about it. He keeps saying, "There's no pulse, she was dead," but he won't explain more. John is a retired doctor, and Millie sees a strange woman in the waiting room, who isn't there when she looks again. And when John sees Elma, he calls her Eva, and then he dies from a heart attack. Sears and Ricky tell Don their story.
And then there were two.
Yeah. Back in the day, when they were about 20, the four young men, all knew Eva Galley, and they admit they killed her 50 years ago. They tell the story as another flashback to those days when they were all young. Eva was a new girl in town, and all four men wanted to get to know her better. And she rented that big house that we saw earlier. It was big and beautiful then, and it's big and run down now. The four friends all kind of want Eva. They're all kind of sweet on her. But there's only one of her to go around until Edward kind of wins the game, but they try to have sex and he fails at it. Later, they all get drunk and want to hear more about Ed's sex, and he covers up his failure. And they all insist they want to go over to Eva's house to dance with her, and they're all drunk and in the party mood. And things devolves into a fight. And Eva, in the process, gets bashed in the head. And medical school John, he says she has no pulse. She's dead. So they panic and like, what do we do? What do we do? They load up her body into the car and push it into the lake. Except as the car sinks, they all watch as Eva wakes up in the back seat trying to get out, and she drowns in the car. Oops. So they kind of killed her twice. Well, they just never say anything about that, going to cover it up. It didn't happen. Ricky and Sears tell Don that the four men swore never to speak of it, and the crime was never discovered. No one ever came looking for Eva, and everybody in town just thought, she left abruptly. Don thinks Eva has come back as Alma and wants revenge. Well, the three of them go to Eva's long-abandoned house, where Gregory and his brother had been hiding before. Don breaks his leg falling through the rotten staircase, so Sears goes in the car to get help as Ricky explores the old house. And Sears doesn't get very far before running off the road thanks to Eva showing up in the middle of the road, scaring him off the side. He crashes and dies. Ricky flags down a passing car, which turns out to be Gregory, who is clearly working for the dead Eva. Ricky stabs the lunatic and the car crashes, but he's okay. He then calls the sheriff to check out the lake where they dumped that car decades ago. Don, back at the haunted house, hears Eva/Elma wandering around in her bridal gown. And she is just a ghost, but they have a conversation. She slowly walks to Don and plans to do bad things to him. Well, meanwhile, Ricky and the sheriff tow the car out of the lake. As Eva's drowned, rotting corpse falls out of the car, it crumbles away. Back at the house, Elma's ghost also crumbles away.
Yep, that's a ghost story.
Yeah.
Well, the four members of the Chowder Society were all big stars in their younger days, but they were all way past their primes here. Most of the publicity at the time focused on these big names in the cast, but Craig Wasson and Alice Krieg did most of the heavy lifting here.
Mm-hmm.
I know her as the Board Queen.
And lots of other
several
stuff, yeah.
more, horror-type roles later on. She was young once.
Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah.
I can't say I ever noticed her before the Board Queen, but okay.
It's weird, too, because I never had noticed her before, but
She's been in lots of things for a
very
long time.
Since I saw her as the Board Queen, now I keep saying, it's the Board Queen. She seems like she's in a lot of stuff.
A memorable role to make her stand out in your mind.
Yeah, she had done stuff previously to the Board Queen.
It's definitely one of the slowest stories of revenge. It took 50 years before the ghost returned for revenge. That's not really explained why, but that's the way it worked.
Yeah.
It's a little slow to watch, too, with 2 very long flashbacks and surprisingly little action. With those old men, now what are they going to do? Have a foot chase?
No.
It's a very good ghost story and a mystery, but it's a little slow.
Yeah, a little, but
I want to know how Ricky got the sheriff to get down to the lake with a tow truck.
So fast.
Find that car, pull it out with no questions asked when the lake is frozen over, all in the time it took for that ghostly woman to walk toward Don in the haunted house.
Yeah, Don is still just hanging out at the haunted house. So you got to go to the sheriff, explain it all to him, persuade him that we need to do it right away.
Get together
And
a
then
bunch of people that
a
can
bunch of
dive and tow
people
trucks.
with the
and,
diving and the tow trucking and everything, and then find where the car is that quickly because it's been down there for 50 years. Yeah, that was a bit of a stretch.
I believe all the rest of it, though.
The rest of
it's like a documentary.
The rest of it was completely real. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And as always, as usual, we watched a short film this week. This one's called The Sleepwatcher from 2023. Directed by Aaron Fradkin, stars Victoria Fradkin, Gwen Van Dam, and Dylan Clark. 8 minutes and 4 seconds. Watch it at the link on the show notes. What happens?
Well, a girl has a nightmare about a phone call on an old rotary phone. She can't move, and hears someone breathing heavily on the phone who says something about liking to watch her sleep. Well, the next night it happens again, and this time she also sees someone in her room. The creature then turns into a mirror, and things get weirder. And you're wondering, is this sleep paralysis? Is it really a dream? Huh.
It's a very dreamy dreamy show.
It was, yeah. It looks really good. Like you said, it's very dreamlike and strange. And we don't get much as far as the way of explanation. But it's more like riding along with her as she experiences her dreams or these visions. It's really well done. The quiet bits and the parts with the narration work really well. And her narration is really excellent.
I think that's what
really
stood
well
out
written.
was the quality of the audio in this one.
Yeah, it's really well written, well done.
Yeah, very cool. Take a look at that. It's only 8 minutes. Why not?
Yeah, check it out. It's worth it.
All right, then we watched Personal Shopper from 2016, and I'll be honest, I had never heard of this movie. It popped up on a Google search of ghost stories, and
I had never heard of it before.
All right.
Yeah.
Written and directed by Olivier Assayas, stars Kristen Stewart, Lars Eidinger, and Sigrid Bozes. Hour and 45 minutes. Trailer in the show notes if you haven't seen this one.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler free, what happens?
Spoiler free, well, this is slow paced, but it had enough overlapping things going on to collectively make it interesting. There's travel and angst and loss and murder and spiritualism and luxury shopping and mystery and ghosts.
One of those things doesn't match the others.
We liked it quite a bit. Yeah. Luxury shopping? What?
Why not?
Well, that's what she is. She's a personal shopper. There's this incredibly rich woman who wants stuff, clothes and jewelry and whatever, and that's what she does. That's her job. She goes shopping at these high-end places for this rich woman. Yeah.
Seems like the job to have.
I'm sure that there's really people that do that. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Maureen unpadlocks the big metal gate out in the country, and she's given the keys to the big mansion there. It's big and mostly empty inside, with lots of dust. It's dark at night, and there doesn't seem to be any electricity. She gets creeped out by some sounds and calls, "Lewis, is that you?" In the morning, somebody stops by, and Maureen says she felt something, but it wasn't close enough to contact last night. Maureen just isn't sure, but the people who are buying the house need to know if the thing inside is benevolent or not. The clients talk about abstract art and a woman who painted abstract art before abstract art was invented. And they spend like 3 or 4 minutes talking about this abstract art woman. And then there's a book. I don't think this abstract art goes anywhere.
No, it's just part of the weirdness. But,
okay.
Well, there's implications that she was in touch with the other side, too.
Yeah.
It adds to the spiritualism creepiness, where she was receiving images from the other side, and she was ahead of her time as far as painting. Her paintings weren't revealed in her lifetime, but years later, they found them, and they were groundbreaking before they should have existed.
Okay.
So it
was weirdness.
Weirdness, yeah.
Maureen then goes to a fashion place and picks up a bunch of clothes for Kira. She then goes to another store and buys more stuff. It's all very expensive. She drops the stuff off at Kira's place and picks up an envelope of money. Kira is a big model or movie star or something, and she pays Maureen to buy her clothes.
Mm-hmm. And jewelry. And yeah.
Then she goes home to read a book on that same abstract artist, Hilma af Klint, who was also a medium. She watches videos on her phone about the same people and also about old-time spiritualists. Then she gets a call from Gary and she whines about her job. She likes living in Paris, but the shopping job is so monotonous. If I was spending $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a day on shopping, I wouldn't call it boring. Even if it wasn't for me.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of interesting.
He's working IT for the embassy in Muscat, Oman. Maureen gets a heart ultrasound. She has a heart murmur just like her twin brother Louis. That's what killed Louis, but that was rare and unusual. She should be fine. Maureen then talks to Ingo, Kira's other man, at Kira's place. Kira is in the bedroom arguing about gorillas on the phone and doesn't want to talk to Maureen about her leather pants. So Ingo offers Maureen a job with his magazine, but she's not interested. Maureen admits that she's only staying in Paris hoping to hear from her dead brother. She is a medium after all.
Yeah, and Ingo's kind of hanging out there waiting for his turn to talk to Kira. He's sure that she's going to break up with him, and he doesn't want to. He says it's just for the sex, but he's not ready for the relationship to end. And they have a pretty decent conversation. They both kind of click together.
Well, that night, Maureen goes back to Louis's mansion and tries to contact him again. The bathtub starts running water by itself. "I'm going to need more from you," she says. "Yeah, these things happen, but it could just be, things. That's not proof of a ghost."
Right, yeah. And even if it is a ghost, she wants some sign that it's Louis, her brother, and she's not getting anything.
She sees a ghostly light, and she and it chase each other around the house. "You're not my brother," she yells. She runs to the door and leaves the place immediately. She then goes to the train station and buys a ticket to London. She then gets some cryptic text messages on her phone. Could it be Louis? And I got a little note here. If it was Louis texting on the phone, why would he be so enigmatic about his answers?
Yeah, and why would a
"Yes, I'm
ghost
Louis. I'm dead. Here I am."
Why would a ghost be texting her? Yeah.
How would a ghost be texting her?
How would a ghost be texting her? Yeah, but yeah, if it's Louis, why wouldn't he just say, hi sis?
If he can type
I'm
that
back.
well, he can tell the whole story.
Yeah.
So we figure it's probably not Louis.
Right. Just
She's not so sure.
stalker person or something. Yeah.
Once in London, she buys more clothes for Kira. She then gets back on the train back to Paris. I thought she was leaving town for good, but no, she's just on a shopping trip.
Yep.
The mystery texting continues throughout the entire trip, and she still has no idea who it is. She drops off the new purchases at Kira's house, and she makes herself at home. She tries on Kira's clothes, something she's forbidden to do. The next day, she tells Laura about the ghost she saw in the house, and it's gone now. The couple is going to buy the house, and Lara was Louis's girlfriend, and now she's ready to move on too.
Mm-hmm. She's got another guy, and they have a nice conversation, her and the new guy.
Yeah. Maureen watches a documentary about Victor Hugo, who used to talk to spirits. It involved a pedestal table that rocked back and forth in code. For several days, she continues texting back and forth with that mystery man. She picks up some very expensive-looking jewelry and drops them off at Kira's, but she finds the place a bloody mess. Kira is dead on the floor.
Whoops.
She leaves in a panic, but eventually calls the police. A detective questions her, and he knows that she spent the night at Kira's. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she did.
Yeah, but,
It's not what he thinks.
it's not, yeah.
The man on the phone wants to know if she told the police about his texts. She goes home and finds the jewelry from Cartier that she knows she left at Kira's house. That's not going to look at all suspicious.
Yeah.
You killed her and took the jewels.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the phone guy then texts that he's coming up to her room. Someone she doesn't see slides a note under the door. Could it be a ghost?
Could be.
The police try to arrest Ingo for the murder, and he pulls out a gun, shoots them, and runs away. He's eventually caught, confesses to everything, and the case is closed. He killed Kira.
Mm-hmm.
She goes to stay at Lara's house, where she meets Erwin, one of Louis's co-workers and Lara's new boyfriend. He says she needs to move on and let Louis go. And then we see a ghost standing behind her who breaks a coffee cup.
That's where she has the conversation with him.
She doesn't see Louis back there, but we do.
Well, or is it? It's
Yeah,
just
could
some
be
other
somebody
ghost
else.
too. Yeah, but she just thinks the glass, fell off the cupboard. She just got, glass broke, and yeah.
Maureen then flies to Oman, where she stays at Gary's place. He's away in the mountains for a few days. He leaves her a note to meet him there, and when she arrives up in the mountains of Oman, she sees a glass float across the room and smash, just like it did behind her at Lara's place. Lewis, are you here? She doesn't think it's Lewis. Who are you? Or is it just me?
Mm-hmm.
And it ends.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
Vaguely, leaving it up in the air.
Well, the texting back and forth I thought went on way too long. Any reasonable person would have blocked that mystery texter and his stupid games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was annoyed with him. It wasn't like she was, in love or anything. What the hell is this guy texting me about all the time?
There's a block for that.
And it's pretty obvious it wasn't a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
It's very slow moving. There was the plot with the shopping and the murder, and the plot about Lewis, and there's a plot about the ghost and her being a medium. It was a very vague ending. Was Ingo the man who was texting her all along? I think we assume that it was. But if not, who would it have been? And who was that ghost?
Or is there more than one ghost?
Was Lewis just messing with her? We definitely did see ghosts, so it's not all in her head. So what's really going on here? And what did that business with the abstract or art have to do with the story at all? It's a little vague and a little bit artsy-fartsy, but I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Very different.
Uh-huh.
Which takes us to Paranormal Activity 2 from 2010. Directed by Todd Williams, written by Michael R. Perry, Christopher Landon, and Tom Pabst. Stars Katie Featherston, Micah Sloat, Sprague Graydon, and Brian Boland. Runtime, hour and a half. These are the same people as the previous movie.
Huh. They said, hey, that first movie made a load of money. Let's make another one. It did. It had the budget was small, very small, indie level, and it made countless millions.
It was something like
popularity.
200,000 or something like that.
And
yeah,
it was like
many
200
millions.
million that it made or something like that. It was just absurd, the amount of money it made compared to how much they put into it. A very surprise hit.
I think I saw one time that it may be the most profitable horror movie of all time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, like along the lines of Blair Witch, where they spent hardly anything on it, and it made millions and became a phenomenon.
Well, the first movie was interesting. It was found footage. It was very different. There's not a lot of people running all over the woods or anything like that. It's, some cameras in a house and stuff happens, and sometimes stuff doesn't happen, and you got to look carefully to see what's going on. And it was unique and it was fun.
You say, oh, look, the teddy bear moved, or this thing, the pillow shifted.
I missed it. Rewind it.
Oh yeah. Sometimes it's very subtle, the movements and things that happen.
Could they do it again?
Well, they did it again.
Well, this was a prequel to the first movie, giving a little explanation of what the causes were that led up to the first movie. It's mostly more of the same, with activity that slowly builds to something terrible happening, and lots of long, lingering night footage shots. If you like the first one, you'll probably like this one too.
You probably will, yeah.
And then there's the third and the fourth one that are kind of the same also.
Mm-hmm.
They're all playing on the same story. It's a lot like the Saw movie.
Yep.
They're all tied together. Well, what happens?
Well, Daniel and Christy bring home the new baby and show the baby around the house. As Dan walks through the house with the baby, he notices the front door is standing open. Martine, the nanny, is there, as is Ollie, the daughter, and Kirsty's sister, Katie and Micah, Katie's boyfriend. So we're setting up the initial characters. Well, about a year later, someone ransacks the whole house, breaking things and turning over all the furniture. It's a mess. Nothing seems to be missing except for one piece of jewelry. And the baby's room is untouched. Well, the couple calls in some security experts to set up cameras and motion sensors through the house.
What? There's cameras throughout the house?
Now we're going to have footage, not just the handheld camera. Yeah. Well, that night, the pool light turns off all on its own. Martine, who's a Mexican traditionalist, says there's something evil in the house. The second night, the baby's mobile moves all by itself. The third night, there's music in the baby's room. And the fourth night, we hear heavy breathing. The fifth night, Martina is home alone with the baby, and she hears a crash from upstairs as the dog starts barking.
Oh, this happens like in a minute or two. These first few nights we get
A quick
a
montage
lot
of,
fast.
Yep. Dan and Christy get home, and they're not happy with Martine's response of burning herbs to ward off the evil. And the next morning, Martine is fired. Other really minor things start happening in the ensuing nights, and Christy comes to the conclusion that they have a ghost now, which is laugh material for the rest of the family. They start reviewing the footage from the security cameras, and they do find some weird stuff. Well, one night, Allie and Brad pull out the Ouija board and start playing with it. It says HNT. The baby's name is Hunter. Ollie gets locked outside, and the baby flies around the room while she's gone. Afterward, the baby wanders around the house alone. When Christy and Dan return home, the baby is back where he's supposed to be. Allie blames the ghost, and Dan is not supportive.
Dan does not believe in this ghost.
No. Well, Allie does research and thinks maybe it's a demon instead of a ghost. Allie encounters some more weirdness and talks to her mother about it. Could Martine have been right about the bad spirits? Katie warns Christy to stay away from all this, or she'll end up like their mother. Christy soon gets a big scare in the kitchen, and she no longer doubts anything. That night, something hurts the dog, and Dan and Allie take him to the vet, leaving Christy with the baby. She gets dragged through the house and locked in the basement. We see all this on the security camera footage. In the morning, Christy is back, and she's acting really weird. She looks pretty normal, but Allie is afraid of her. Allie shows Dan the tapes, and he doesn't deal with it well at all. But he calls Martine to come back and do her protective rituals again.
Yeah, see, she was right all along.
She was, yes. When your traditional Mexican housekeeper says, there's ghosts, there's evil, we need to burn some herbs, listen to her.
They fired her for burning some sage in the house.
Which was smoke. They didn't want the baby exposed to smoke, and they, and he thought, no, she's just being crazy, and that combined. And,
it's not like she's a chain smoker. It was one time.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Well, Martine says the only way to fix the problem is to transfer the possession to a blood relative, and that would be Katie, Christy's sister. They think they can transfer the demon out of her and just not tell anybody. Lots of crazy stuff happens in the dark house.
Here's a demon, pass it on.
Yeah, which, is what leads to the thing in the second movie, because they passed it on, yeah. Well, no one in the house seems to have a flashlight when the lights go out, so they all wander around with night vision cameras. There's a jump scare or two as Dan drives the demon out of Christy. The lights come back on, and everything seems normal again. Well, 3 weeks later, Christy talks to Katie, who says some weird stuff is now happening at their house. And they're like, really? Huh. And then the events of the first film occur, killing Micah. Sometime later, Katie comes over and kills both Dan and Christy and takes baby Hunter away.
Well, that escalated quickly.
That didn't go well at all.
Let's pass this demon on to my sister. What could happen?
Well, they found out. Yeah.
All right, well, this is a prequel to the first film, explaining why the demon was picking on Katie and Micah. There are many long, lingering shots where almost nothing happens. It's like those pictures you compare to see if there is any differences between the right picture and the left picture. Mm-hmm. Has something moved? Is there something different? There's some vague explanation about Christy's grandmother making a deal with the demon and Hunter being the first male born in the family, but nothing is definitely spelled out in certainty. Kevin says that this is the same as the first film, but it's supposed to have higher stakes because it has a baby and a dog.
That's kind of what they did, yeah.
Let's do it again, but let's make it serious.
Yeah.
Baby and a dog. Will the dog die? Will the baby die?
But it is a decent prequel. But
it was fine. Yeah. If you like the first one, you'll like the second one.
Mm-hmm. You could almost watch them in reverse order. Watch the second one first and then the first one.
Well,
almost.
This one spoils that Micah dies. That would kill the first movie.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the... What do you think about those chronological lists of movies? When you get something like Star Trek where this stuff happens, and then there's prequels, and then there's stuff that comes later.
And then you're supposed to watch them in different
here's
order.
Star Wars,
the Saw
Episode 4 started it.
The
and
Saw
then I go
movies
back.
are that way, too. Yeah.
And people cut up, chronological lists. You should watch them in this order that they happened. Watch
Well,
movie 1, 2, 3. Yeah, no.
I
no.
generally
Don't
prefer
wait.
to go with the order they came out.
Yes, because that's what they assume that you did.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for today. Check in at horrorbulletin.com, where you can read about 2011's Paranormal Activity 3, which comes, I
It's
don't
even
remember.
more
Was that
prequel-y.
before? That was even more prequel-y.
More
Yes, it
prequel-y.
was.
Yes, it's prequel to the second one.
And 1999 Stir of Echoes, where Kevin Bacon gets hypnotized, and he starts seeing dead people.
Uh-huh.
Or is he just crazy?
Well,
It's hard to tell sometimes.
some of each, maybe.
Yeah, stop in over at horrorguys.com, read these daily, horrorbulletin.com, where you get an email once a week, horrorguyspodcast.com to subscribe to the podcast using your regular old podcatcher. Somewhere on YouTube, you can find our videos. It's basically just the audio, but it's there too.
Uh-huh.
And of course, most important, horrorguysbooks.com, where you can pick up all kinds of books. And we're working on something new right now. We got some biographies happening. We got a biography of Lon Chaney Jr., biography of Vincent Price, biography of Peter Cushing, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and more. Coming within the next few weeks. We'll be putting something on the website about those pretty soon.
You betcha.
Yeah. And then, next week we'll have 4 more movies and a short. And I'll bet they'll be about ghosts.
And there might even be some comic book mention, too.
Oh, you got a comic book you want to review?
I got a graphic novel.
Graphic novel.
Graphic novel, yeah. Somebody was nice enough to contact me and said, hey, we'll give you a copy to read if you talk about it. And I said, yeah, I'd like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to tell you about it. It's a werewolf story, and it's like the first werewolf. Takes place thousands of years ago when werewolves started.
Yeah, if you're an author, if you're an artist, if you're a movie producer, send us your stuff. We'll do reviews. We love indie stuff.
Yeah.
Let us know what's going on there. Email at horrorguys.com. And that's it for this week. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
See you next week.
See ya.